Congratulations on 13 Lives, based on, of course, an amazing event. As it was unfolding, it gripped the world. Were you watching at the time?
Well, I knew about it, and I was certainly following the headlines, but I didn't know that much about the details. And when I read Bill Nicholson's script and began to understand really what was entailed beyond those headlines, I was enthralled. I love the message of the story, but it's a great movie story, and it is full of surprises. It's very emotional. I felt like it would be, rewarding on a lot of levels.
What are you thinking?
Just a crazy idea. But a skill none of the rest of us have.
With the stakes so high, it was decided the only way to withdraw the team from the cave was to sedate each of the kids and dive them out one by one.
It's insane. It's unethical. It's illegal.
The man's already died.
I spoke to Dr. Richard Harris, a man who made the brave decision to anaesthetize each boy in order to get them to safety, an outcome that was far from guaranteed.
I couldn't think of a way that they could survive, but I could think of countless ways that they would die. So I'm quite proud of the fact that I guess I had the courage to follow through with that.
What he's saying about the courage is really what interests me in the story, because you begin to understand it more. And there were so many people taking risks on so many levels. And this was not a sure bet. It was the opposite. It was unlikely to work. And yet people were taking risks like Dr. Harris, the divers physically, emotionally, the Thai government politically, and in terms of like the what the world would have to say about the decisions that they made. I mean, there were so many people, most of them volunteers. Most of them didn't even have to be there. And yet they made these decisions on behalf of this long shot. And it's very moving to me that they had that courage.
Let's have a look.
Being a rescue diver requires a very particular skill set and makes for some anxious viewing. Actor Colin Farrell, who stars in the movie, has called the experience terrifying.
And I had panic attacks underwater. That's a new experience. Panic attack underwater is a new experience for me.
I've made a lot of different films in difficult situations, whether it's fire or space or Formula One tracks or boxing rings, and I've shot underwater a lot. And I felt like this was going to be fairly easy, and I was entirely wrong. Once you immerse them, even if it's in a tank, even with little slits so that cameras can get in, you're still putting human beings in very tight quarters underwater. And we had to take tremendous care, but the actors insisted on doing it all themselves. It was so liberating as a director to be able to get that camera in there with these guys.
You've worked with Aussie actors for a long, long time. Nicole, very early on, Cate Blanchett, Chris Hemsworth, Russell Crowe, of course, and now Joel Edgerton. What is it about these Aussie actors that you keep employing them?
You're told over and over again, don't generalize, but I'm going to do it because it's a positive thing. It's creativity. It's a kind of a presence. It's a can-do spirit. It's unpretentious, but there's a tremendous work ethic and commitment. Different personalities, sure, but all the people you mentioned, they all share that incredibly valuable quality. And, I'd love to work with them all again. I hope I get to.
And finally, Ryan, I love asking this question. What is your favourite movie-making memory? And the caveat is it can't be from this movie. It has to be something in your past. What is your happiest movie-making memory?
Probably successfully shooting the weightless scenes in Apollo 13, where we actually went into an airplane and did parabolas out over the Gulf of Mexico and created weightlessness. And we did it hundreds of times to create, these master shots and wide shots with the actors floating, because it was before digital technology could really make that kind of thing very, filmically authentic. I was up there too, so, that was a thrill. I was frankly, and I will mention this movie, likewise incredibly gratified by the actors getting in those tanks, getting in those caves, and similarly, putting himself through a real physical trial to try to get it right. It was another situation where Hollywood trickery wasn't really going to do it, and they made so much possible. I wasn't down there with them in this case, so I wasn't having that thrill. I'm not sure it was a thrill for anybody. I think it was pretty damn uncomfortable, but hour after hour, day after day, they did it, and I'm very appreciative. underneath it, I hope it's an exciting, thrilling movie for people to see, and I hope they get caught up in it. But it also sort of begs that question, well, if the world could come together and do that for these boys, what else could the world come together and do?
He was the perfect choice, I think, to make this movie. He's such an inventive filmmaker. Sometimes he doesn't get the credit that he deserves in that regard. But it's beautifully cast. The diving scenes, when you're watching it, remember to breathe. Because I was watching it and I had to remind myself.
Colin's saying he had panic attacks. If they're actually having to physically do that, it must be so stressful.
Yeah,
and you can't just hear that story enough without just going, every time you're like, oh my God.
It just all came back to me.
And I interviewed Richard Harris, and I knew a lot about the story. I've researched it a lot, and there's still elements in this movie that I did not know about. So 13 Lives, it's a stunning film. It premieres on Prime Video this Friday, August the 5th.